Welcome, everyone. Episode numero 6 of the Outsider's View Beyond the Game podcast presented by the boys. I am here with my boy Keyshawn Washington. I'm Chico O'Connell, a.k.a. It's Jake NYC. We got the merch on today, so you already know it's going to be a lit episode. Let's start talking about us. We got to get right into it because we got a lot to talk about today in one particular area. But before we get to that, we need to talk about our top stories that have happened since we last spoke. This past weekend, Saturday, was UFC Nashville. Derek Lewis got himself an insane knockout victory, or TKO victory, whatever you want to call it. And, man, that boy's a dog.
He's good, but, that fight from the start to finish was just nuts. A lot of people were upset about it. I personally wasn't about the finish when I seen it. As like it happened, I was like, okay, it's a weird stoppage, but the way how Teixeira was getting pummeled with ground and pound, usually when a fighter is grabbing onto the cage, it's more of like another sign of like tapping out. You know, it just shows that you're not fully there and you're,
He did a little rock climb on the cage. I was like, what?
He's all rock climbing like he's on Mount Everest, trying to get up as fast as he can. It just looked bad from start to finish. But then again, this is Derek Lewis we're talking about. So, the guy always does this to any UFC fighter that's kind of on the upcoming. So, like I said before, the UFC with the heavyweight division, over and over again, they just continuously keep ruining this division because there's no talent in that division. There's no real threat to any of these top contenders. And a guy like Derek Lewis, I mean, if you give a guy like Teixeira, who we're glorifying because he beat Justin Tafa, I mean, come on now. Like, Justin Tafa is like a mid-level heavyweight at best. So, and we're glorifying Teixeira because he beat him, and we're giving him in his second career fight, Derek Lewis. I mean, come on, man. That's absurd. That's like if Kennesaw State beats, for example, if they beat like Marshall or something, and then next thing you know, they go on to face Bama. Why? That doesn't make any sense. That makes no sense. Why are we giving all these unranked heavyweight fighters all the ranked guys that after one win, and the win that they have is not even that spectacular? It's his second fight. It doesn't make any sense.
And I think it also comes down to like the UFC trying to find the next big guy. And, because, I mean, we're talking about, like, now that John Jones is retired, or allegedly.
Allegedly.
Apparently he's coming back. I'm not even going to bother getting
we're not entertaining with John Jones.
Yeah, no. Tom Aspinall now, since he's been undisputed, let's say Tom Aspinall and Derek Lewis are like the two threats in the UFC now. Derek Lewis doesn't want to fight Tom Aspinall, at least not now. He's made that clear. He doesn't want to fight the big guys. He just wants to continue fighting the scrubs, the Walmart workers, whatever the hell he called it. And I mean, when you're an older guy like that, who's just like he's clearly just fighting for fun. Like he doesn't. I don't think he really cares about being undisputed. He just cares about winning the fight in knockout fashion, or however he has to get it done early on, and then hitting the ground and pound. You know what I'm saying? So, I think for Derek Lewis, he's a great fighter, but I think he knows that he's comfortable where he's at right now, and he doesn't want to bother superseding where he's at right now. So why wouldn't you just stick to what you've been doing? I mean, it kind of continues to add to the same problem we have with the heavyweight division, and it's that there's not much going on there, but you got the same two guys dominating now at this point between Tom Aspinall and Derek Lewis. But I think for them two personally, as far as that's okay, but I think for the heavyweight division, I think it's going to be a long time before we actually see somebody start to shift the division again. And we've been saying this even back when we were talking about John Jones not defending not uniting the belt. I think we've been having the same discussion, and we're going to continue to have the same discussion about the heavyweight division until that next big fighter comes around and starts shaking it up. But even when that does happen, and the next big fighter comes to shake up the division, it's going to be the same thing where they're the ones sitting on the top for a long time, and nobody, shifts the division. But at the same time, I think Dana White is having the opposite problem with a lot of the other divisions, and it's that in the other divisions, we're seeing a lot of one defense and then they lose the belt again. And I think that's been clear. I remember after the light heavyweight championship bout between Alex Pineda and Akalaev, I remember seeing there was a clip that came out of Dana White's face after Bruce Buffer showed him the cards that basically determined that Akalaev would be the next champion. And you could see the disappointment in his face. And I don't think that's necessarily disappointment because Pineda himself lost. I think it's because he had yet another new champion. And although it's always great to see a new champion, you want to see a new champion and then hold on to the belt for a little longer. And I feel like those middle couple of weight classes, welterweight, lightweight, middleweight, whatever, all those light heavyweight, besides the flyweight and the heavyweight divisions, all those other belts are getting tossed around like a hot potato. And then you got guys bouncing the divisions with Ilia Topuria. That whole situation messed everything up between the lightweight and welterweight. So,
I mean,
I guess, yeah.
But it's a good thing, though. You would rather have the belts jumping back and forth from time to time because it opens up more fights for fighters rather than just having the champ over, just having the belt for a long time. And what you said about Pereira, I think it's also because Pereira is a big box office. The UFC loves the big names, loves the guys like Pereira, Conor, Ilya, John Jones, Izzy, Kamaru Usman, guys who promote themselves and put their names out there and have a big following. The UFC are gonna like that. They're gonna tend more to them. So obviously, when Alex lost to Magomed, it wasn't preferably the best of choices and the best option for Dana because Magomed's not a big draw. So he's a good fighter, but he's not a big draw to where he's going to create more headlines and bring more eyes into the sport, into the company. So, of course, he would be a little bit disappointed with having Pereira. But speaking on the UFC Fight Night card, the Derek Lewis fight wasn't the only thing that was the craziest thing of the night. A lot of people were having a lot of eyes and a lot of complaints about the Stephen Thompson fight versus Gabriel Bonfim. Now, a lot of people are saying that Bonfim robbed Thompson. Now, I don't know if you watched the fight, but in my eyes, I thought Thompson won. Now, a lot of people were pissed off about it because they're tending more to the fact that because Stephen Thompson had a leg kick, I believe it was in the first round, where he opened his shin. And that kind of dictated the fight. And I'm assuming that possibly the judges saw that and kind of lean towards Bonfim in the first round. In my eyes, I thought Thompson won the second and third round. That's just my opinion. And I thought that Bonfim was all right, but if we look at how the stats were and how the fight went, Thompson pretty much defended, I think it was 5 out of 14 takedowns. He landed more strikes, more significant strikes through the whole match. And Thompson was, I would say, was more pushing the fight for basically the majority of the time. But Bonfim was holding his own. And when he was getting to the ground, it wasn't really like Thompson was in that much danger. So it was disappointing to say the least that Thompson lost that fight because of a shin split. That really dictated it. Because had he not opened his shin, I believe that Thompson would have won the fight.
Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
I don't know how you make it the fight, but I just want to get your opinion on it.
I wasn't fully tapped into the fight. I was watching it a little bit. I did see the bit where he split open his shin, and I seen like the last 2 rounds. Last 2 rounds. It was a 3-round fight. I think I saw the last round in full. But what I will say about that is, considering I wasn't glued to the TV watching it, I think is what I'll say about it is that when it comes down to a situation like that where the shins split opening and whatnot may have determined that first round for the judges to go in Bonfim's favor, I think maybe that's what it was at the end. But regardless, when you have a fight like that where even take that factor out of it, it was still a relatively close fight. When it comes down to the cards like that, in a 3-round fight, It could go either way. And those 3 round fights are difficult because, as a fighter, you really do have to get everything you can out of a round because you don't have those 2 extra rounds to try and get something out of it that you would in a championship fight. So I think for us fans, it sucks because we know we wanted Wonderboy to win, but I think at the end of the day, it's just another one of those situations where the cards could have gone either way. Do I think Do I think Wonderboy won? Yeah, I mean, from what I saw, yeah, but I can't make that full determination considering I wasn't fully glued to the fight and I didn't see every single combination or every single punch that was thrown. So, but because considering I'm a fan of his, I would have wanted him to win. But I think, like I just said, it comes down to the card. When it comes down to the cards, it could go either way. Fans aren't always going to be happy. Let's be honest, we've seen many worse decisions in the UFC as of recent, but that wasn't terrible. But it's just not what we wanted. So it could have gone either way, in my opinion. I think at the end of the day, it was a good judged fight,
Definitely would have.
as good as it could be. And then as far as the Derek Lewis fight and that stoppage, I can't lie. I mean, I was rooting for Derek Lewis. I wasn't as annoyed about the stoppage as a lot of other people were, but I think it was a good stoppage. And what I realized later on is the reason to why the stoppage was the way it was because he had the other guy had grabbed the fence and was basically rock climbing the fence to try and get up, and still wasn't defending himself when he got up. Do I think the judge should have stopped that on the ground? Yes. I think at that point that fight should have been stopped on the ground because then it would have been a little bit of a less controversial thing. UFC Nashville was a blast. It was a good card. Coming up next, UFC 318, Holloway versus Poirier 3, New Orleans. We've already talked about that so much, so there's not too much to get into it. It's just a really exciting fight. It's a really exciting fight that we're looking forward to. And Poirier's retirement fight. It's going to be a scene. The card itself is pretty good. I'm not liking the hate it's getting, but I mean, I get why. But it's still a pretty good card. But also with that, this past weekend, yesterday, Monday, UFC also announced something. UFC is returning to Down Under.
To Perth in September. We are now getting a card in Perth. Usually the atmosphere in Perth is actually pretty good. The fans out there do turn up for a majority of the time. So I do believe that now with Perth, I think they're going to do the Islam versus JDM fight. Now that it's going to be in his hometown. Or they may do Volk, have his title defense against Yair or probably somebody else in the division. Or maybe he goes up against Evloev. Either one, but they're definitely going to have a lot of representation with the Australian and New Zealand background fighters, so I can't wait to see that. Now, most of the times, it's also the card is not like the most glamorous on names. The same thing with 318. Not a lot of big names, but we cannot hate on it because of the lack of big names. The more attention that it gets with the guys that don't have a ranking or don't have a big background coming into the UFC, the better.
And it's great to return. It's great to return to the RAC, baby. RAC Arena, Perth. It's going down in a couple of months, and I'm excited to see how that card looks. Wait. But with that, that's going to be exciting to see. But we do need to move on a little bit because we need to get to our bigger topic. Something that we haven't really talked about on this podcast, but it would be, nice to bring it in. And it is a topic because it's especially been kicking off over the past week or so. Staten Island high school football, high school sports is something that we're going to be talking about in the future a lot, especially when the basketball season comes around because Staten Island high school basketball and New York City high school basketball, that always kicks up and that always gets crazy. But football is coming around soon. It gets started late August, but all the teams are starting to ramp up. They're starting to get back to training now. But one of the biggest stories so far has just come out over this last week. And let me tell you, it's a doozy. So, Forgotten by Four, a new Instagram page for the island. Great people. Shout out Lars Artwork, Anthony Brody, Marquise Pickering, Pix, all the guys over there. for bringing this page to the island, because this is going to bring so much hype to the island for not just all sports, but it also serves as a newsbreaker as well. And boy, let me tell you, this one was a newsbreaker. The big headline: More Catholic last week announced that they would be suspending their football program for the 2025 season after a lack of players on the team. And let me tell you, because this is huge news, because this is a well-respected football program that out of nowhere isn't going to have a season, and they have a brand new field, a brand new coaching staff, but all of a sudden their football program has been suspended. But the thing that makes this story so interesting, not just because it's such a highly respected program, but it's also because there's a couple different narratives to this story. And because the original narrative was that the reason why the season was suspended, and the one that makes most sense, was because there was not enough players. This past season, after this past season, More Catholic's former head coach, Nick Giannatasio, left the More Catholic football program after a long time to go coach at St. Peter's, a rival of More Catholics. He went to go coach at St. Peter's, leaving the football program, and hire a new coaching staff. But now the story is that they're saying that there was an issue with the coaching staff that is part of the reason why the football program was suspended. Now all of a sudden everybody's scrambling. Nobody really knows what's going on. I think that the story about not having enough players makes the most sense. But at the same time, the fashion that they did it in could be the reason why it's such a mixed story. I'm going to pull up this article here. The Mavericks program has seen a significant decline in players since the school and ninth-year head coach Nick Giannatasio parted ways in March. A host of players have transferred in the wake of Giannatasio's exit and subsequent arrival at St. Peter's, and despite hiring Anthony Barnes, who is their new head coach, the players have continued to leave. Now, their athletic director emphasized that the administration is pleased with the work that Barnes has done since he was hired in early April. However, the program's current roster includes just 21 players, with the 2025 season less than 2 months away. That was the issue that was made big originally, that they didn't have enough players. And even included in that, you have their AD saying that they're pleased with the work that their new head coach, Anthony Barnes, has done. And despite its best efforts, Moore's administration, including President Gina DeSantis and Principal Scott Gable, decided that players' safety was now at stake and made the very, very difficult decision to suspend the football program. So, it could have been left as simple as that. The football program was suspended because of a lack of players, and a lack of players brings up a risk of safety. That was it. That was simply it. That's a fully understandable reason. It sucks, but it's a fully understandable reason. Now let's take a look at the statement that was released by More Catholic themselves. This statement was released by Gina DeSantis, the president of More Catholic High School, and in this statement, it states that as a team had a disappointing season and no one wanted to come play for More Catholic High School to play football, we found this reasoning rather curious. As of over the last 10 years, the program had enjoyed seasons of tremendous success. That is true. But guys, that's the past. We're talking about the future now. Nobody wants to come play for More Catholic. That was made evident. It may not necessarily be because of More Catholic, but maybe because there's better programs out there. The coach gave us a written document outlining what, in his opinion, needed to be accomplished to move the football program forward in the coming year. One of the recommendations from a lengthy list was that the school accept students who are neither academically, socially, or emotionally qualified to meet the rigor of a More Catholic student athlete. Listed was the recommendation that the school admit students who are academically unqualified, as the school would not consider the actions for any athletic or co-curricular program. The decision was made to not accept this recommendation. Understandable. You want to protect your school's academic side, of course, but this is where it gets crazy. as the philosophies did not align, it was mutually agreed that the football coaching staff, which was just hired, I might add, was just hired in April, it was mutually agreed that the coaching staff and the school would part ways. This is where it gets crazy. Because you've got the original story that there wasn't enough players on the team, but now you've got not just this whole new story being blown out, that the real reason is because the coaching staff wanted to take a less than ideal approach. And that's not coming from players on the team. It's not coming from a coach blowing the whistle. This is coming from your school's administration. Your school's top administrator, the president, is blowing this news up. So now, this is a whole crazy different story, because now you've got all this. People are going crazy on the internet because they don't really know what the truth is. And you've still got now players without a season. Aki, I just want to get your immediate thoughts on this.
It's a lot, but it's like, bro, it just seems like the school has, like, they're trying to cover up something that's, like, much bigger than what they're publishing, you know? And it's all, like, he said, she said, it's this, it's that. 1 minute, it's all, you know, it's not enough players. Then it's because of the coach. Then it's because there are guys who are not, they don't want to come to the school. And then it's academics. We're talking about more Catholic, you know. It is a Catholic school, but it's also more of like a public school, you know. And I don't think it would be that difficult for you to find players, you know. Now, I don't know what goes on in the recruiting of high school, you know, when it comes to the coaches and to bringing in players. I don't know how that system works. But it just seems to me like there's a lot of things that are, like, just being twisted and being, like, all moved around that just seems shady, you know, with more. It's all like a big mess. It just seems like a big old mess that they're trying to cover up something really big happened within the program, and now they're trying to just publish something to save face. And, you know, I feel bad for the players mostly, because the players are getting screwed out of this, because now they don't have a season. They lost their team for the whole year. They don't get to play football, you know. And you know, there's also seniors on that team. This is their last year in high school, and they don't get a chance to showcase their talents to go to a college and are able to, you know, further, you know, develop their career. They now have to sit a whole year, not even on the sideline, just sitting, not doing anything, probably find another sport, or just simply just go to school and not play football, the one sport that they love to do the most. You know, the players are getting screwed out of this because they're paying the school to go here, and they were expected to have a team. You only have 21 players for a season. I mean, that's impossible. I understand that you lost your coach, and the players that you have from last season either graduated or transferred, but it just doesn't make sense how you don't have enough players to have a season. 21 guys for a high school. There's like over, I believe, like 300 people or so that probably go to more.
Granted, more is a smaller school, though, as a lot of those Catholic schools are. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, compared to like what we're used to, Key, when we went to public school, Port Richmond was a relatively small school, with maybe like a little over 1,700 or something like that. But you know, we're talking like other big schools like Tottenville that has over like 3,500 kids. Like, these Catholic schools struggle with that a little smaller, but at the same time, the Catholic schools, like, sports-wise, is a lot bigger of a transfer market than people realize. Maybe a lot more than it should be, but especially on the island and football, that makes it big for that. Now, kind of stepping back a little bit to give a little context to the situation of the players that did leave and how significant a lot of those players did leave. A lot of significant players left that weren't graduating. We're talking their starting QB, Tommy Zay, transferred to Erasmus Hall. Obviously, their head coach, their former head coach, Nick Giannatasio, is now coaching at St. Peter's. Yandel Pelez, another big player for them, originally from the DMV, he's transferred. That's yet to be determined where he's going. Gerald Green Jr. was a three-star recruit and a Boston College commit. Transferred to a high school in Texas. An all-star honorable mention, Jaden Melendez transferred to Curtis. A former number one recruit out of Canada, Rodane Smith, has transferred to a high school in Florida. Glenn Shepard transferred to Tonville. An all-star third team member, Omar Mendez Jr., transferred to T-ville. Miles Sinclair has a Wagner offered. He's rumored to be transferring to Curtis. So you've got all these huge guys who played a really big part in Moore's season last year are all transferring. On top of that, as I briefly mentioned before, Moore Catholic just spent hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of dollars on a brand new turf field, which, safe to say, is one of the more eye-catching fields in the city, being an all red and all black turf field. But they've spent so much money into this football program just in these last couple of months alone. And now you've brought a new coaching staff in as early as April to try and rebuild this program. And now not only is this football program no more for the year and for the foreseeable future, they also are being thrown under the bus by their own school, by their own school's administration. And if you ask me, there's definitely a lot more than that. Like you just said, there's definitely a lot more that the school administration is making it out to be. I think there's more to the story. Whether or not it's a bigger story, I don't know. But there's definitely a lot that isn't being told. But regardless, at the end of the day, like you said, it doesn't matter how much sketchy stuff is going on behind the scenes. At the end of the day, you have a school that's without a football program, meaning you have student athletes who are without a place to play, a lot of seniors, even some transfers, some kids who came into the Moore Catholic school to try and help rebuild this football team are now themselves without a season, and they just left. Whether they just left another program who was perfectly fine, they wanted to come and help this Moore Catholic team, and now they can't play football at all because they just wanted to come help, and they just wanted a place to come play football. So I think it sucks for the students on that team. I think it sucks for the families associated with that team. But I also think that Moore Catholic has the right, Moore Catholic owes these families and owes the players, because they have a right to full transparency from their school, the school that they give money for their students and their kids and their loved ones to not only attend, but to also play football at. They give money into this football program to keep this football program functioning. They have a full right to understand what is going on in their school and in their school's football program. And I think also people in the comment sections of these breaking news, of these posts, and people on the streets saying that, yeah, we should all have a right. No, the families have a right to this. The students have a right to this. I didn't say everybody else on the island has a right to this, because at the end of the day, it's none of their business. It only has to do with the students and the families on this team. They should be the ones getting the full information on this team. But instead, the school is releasing public statements to the whole island just to throw their coaching staff under the bus. I don't know how true that whole situation is with the coaching staff wanted to bring in players who were not academically fit for the school. I don't know how true that is. Do I believe it? I could see the possibility of it, not just because of the coaching staff that's there, but if I were in the position of I didn't have enough players for a season, I'd be taking any means necessary to try to bring players in, or at least trying to suggest the fact to do so. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was true, but regardless, even whether or not it's true, this school is throwing their coaching staff under the bus, where they should be supporting them. The same coaching staff that they just hired back in April, the same coaching staff that was trying to rebuild their program, and that's the whole reason why you brought them into your school, is being thrown under the bus. If you ask me, I think it's a really terrible situation all around. It sucks. Now the island's down a team, and a team that used to compete, or at least put up a fight with a lot of these other teams, and we're down a rivalry now with a lot of schools. So, and this is a long-standing school that has a rich history. So, it sucks. But at the end of the day, it just goes to show the type of stuff that goes on behind the scenes. And all of a sudden, this is being blown out and being broken news. And it's not just talk in the streets now. Now it's really on social media. And I want to thank Forgotten by Four, this new media outlet, for being this news source for the island, because this is really going to bring to light a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes in high school sports on Staten Island.
Hopefully, we're just hoping for the best with the players in the team. We're hoping that this situation could just be resolved as quickly as possible, because all we want is to have another team like Moore to give us more competitive games and bring more entertainment to the island. That's all we want.
And with staying on Staten Island high school football, another big shout out to Forgotten by Four, because they started doing other things like preseason top 25 and preseason team rankings on the island. So we're going to start by taking a brief look at the top 25 for this season that has been listed out by Forgotten by Four. And no surprise here that the top two are Tottenville guys. Kasim Cromwell, shout out to him at 4 for Port Richmond. He's not even arguably at this point the best player on Port Richmond. He's a dog. I'm pretty sure he plays both sides of the ball. I've gotten to see him play. He's also a really good basketball player, but I'm excited to see what he could do for Port Richmond this season. Another Port Richmond shout down at 13, AJ Zimmerman. He's also good as well. But then, take a look at this, right? Tommy Zay, over at 8, originally at More Catholic, now not. So that's another big thing. But if you look through the rest of this list here, you can see he was really the only More Catholic guy that was listed. But one trend that we see here, a lot of Tottenville guys. So and then for Curtis, they got a couple good shouts in there as well. St. Peter's, not as many as I thought there would be. I'm not gonna lie to you. Only Chris Baden at 17, and Josiah Jones Jr., who's also a really good player, at 24. So, I think when you talk about things like this, top 25 at a high school level in Staten Island particularly, this is all just like speculation, let's remind you, especially the fact that it's preseason. We could see a guy like Josiah Jones Jr. jump from 24 to like the top 5. Not just because of the type of player he is, but also because it's St. Peter's. St. Peter's is a really good football program. Same thing with Chris Baden, or any other guy on St. Peter's who isn't maybe not even be listed in here. And then you could say the same thing for Monsignor Farrell, or all the rest of those or for all we know, the rest of those Tottenville guys could all jump up to the top 5, because you got Corey Brown and Tyshawn Bent in 1 and 2, then jump down to 6 and 7, Omar Mendez Jr. and Elijah Jones down at 6 and 7, and then Glenn Shepard at 18, who is a More Catholic transfer, and Jaden Innocent at 21. That is 2, 4, 6 Tottenville guys in the top 25. So, and we all know how dominant Tottenville is as a program, and us as Port Richmond people, we know. But especially this past season, which was a rough season, give or take, we know. But Tottenville has been battering guys, especially, and their program's only continuing to get better. But I think for all these other schools that put up good numbers against them, and all these other specific players, they're going to want to look to make sure they're the ones getting the spotlights out, because these are also guys, a lot of these guys have offers and have people looking at them, but at the same time, some of them don't. There's still some guys coming into the season, a lot of guys who haven't gotten much recognition, or as much recognition as they like to, and want to get up there. Take a look at JT Rose, for example, right? He's the only Newdorp guy in this top 25. Newdorp's football program is not the best, but it's not the worst. So when you have that situation where you could be the guy for your football program, at the end of the day, if your team's not really winning much, you have to be the one to stand out. So I think for people who are those one shouts like JT Rose or Cinque Thomas from MSIT, another program that's in a similar boat as Newdorp, you know, you want to look to be the standout. Another thing I'm interested to see here, the St. Joseph by the Sea guys, their highest guy is Joseph Moran at 16. So Christian Carter down at 25, Christian Yu down at 23. St. Joseph by the Sea's football program is well led. Baptiste is their head coach. He's a former NFL guy, and they've been winning games. It's not that they're in a rut, but I think for especially the Catholic schools, you've got so many other big dogs on the island alone that could make some noise and can give you struggles. And I think C is one of those teams that is not necessarily the favored in matchups like that when they play Farrell or when they play Peters or even when they used to play Moore. I think they're kind of always the underdog in those situations, but don't count St. Joseph by the Sea out. I think they can make some noise, and I think those guys listed in those top 25 could make some noise for St. Joseph by the Sea this season. And then, especially that more Catholic side of the situation, now that's one less that's one less team that all these Catholic schools have to deal with. So it opens the floodgates to them. And then, of course, you got Farrell, who got a couple of guys in here. Braxton Moy is up at 3. And then you got a couple of guys down there as well. So, and then Curtis, obviously moving into the public schools, always makes noise on the island in all sports. But, yeah, I'm interested to see if this top 25 lives to its potential come the end of the season. I would be interested to see maybe like a month-by-month redo of these top 25s as the season goes on. And just to see kind of where we end up at the end of the season, if these players kind of end up being the same at the end of the season. I'd love to see a guy like Kasim Cromwell jump up to be the number 1 player on the island, because I think if you ask some people, he could, I think Kasim should have at least been in number 3 on this list. These T-ville guys are hard to beat, but I think with the right players around him at Port Richmond, Kasim Cromwell can be the problem for Tottenville. So I'm interested to see how that matchup turns out. I don't know if the schedule has been released yet, but at some point Port Richmond will play Tottenville. So I'm interested to see how he does. I'm interested to see how AJ Zimmerman does. I know we're a little biased being Port Richmond guys, but I'm still interested to see how they come back this season, because for those of you who don't know, Port Richmond had a really rough season last year. They didn't win a game. And in the season before that, I believe it was a split season, 4-4. So, and just looking over the last couple of seasons in general for Port Richmond, haven't been the best for them. But this is a team with a really rich history. Head coach Lou Vesey has been with the program for a really long time. I think well over 20 years at this point. He's been with the team. He's a great guy. He's a great coaching mind. But I think it's just about talent at this point that Port Richmond lacks. Besides Kasim and AJ, Port Richmond has a couple of other great guys, but you need guys that are going to be able to compete with all these other big teams. Not only does Port Richmond have to deal with the teams that are on Staten Island alone, Port Richmond plays in the top football division in the city for public schools. They play in the 4A. So you're competing against guys like Erasmus Hull, who is the top football team in the city. So, you need to be able to continue to compete with teams like this. It's not like you're playing in a lower division. You're playing in the top division in the city. So you're going to be playing against the top talent in the city, not just on the island. So, I think the thing about these Catholic schools is that they play obviously off the island teams as well, like Christ the King or all these other Catholic schools, but they don't play. They play a lot more island games, I feel like, than they do away teams. So I think for Port Richmond, in order to have a really good comeback season, they're gonna need the talent, and the players that are already on their team are going to have to step it up. And I think Port Richmond has the chance to be a great program again. And with Lou Vesey as their coach, you have a chance just with that alone. But he's a really looked over coach by the rest of the island nowadays, because people don't really look at Port Richmond like that anymore. So I think Port Richmond's, it's going to take a lot to have a really good comeback season, but I think they can do it. But yeah, I know you're not as tapped in with high school football as I am, but I mean, what are your thoughts on Port Richmond alone?
Well, over the years, they've lost some talent for sure. So the biggest thing you could hope for with Port is that they, everything comes together. Not only with talent, but with the coaching as well. If they could get the right players into the system and build on it, then I feel like, the sky's the limit. And looking at the top 25, it's a great group of guys. The one thing I will hope for with the top 25 is that there's consistent changes. I don't want to, you will want to see guys who weren't even in the top 25 move into it, just so then they can get the more recognition, but also to build more competitiveness within the division. So, with Port, it's definitely going to be an interesting season for them. I feel like the best thing about them is that off of last year is that they have nothing to lose. They just came off of a winless season, so they really have nothing to lose, and that's kind of the best position you want to be if you are a football team or any team specifically, where you have your back against the wall, where you have nothing to lose at all, because there's no expectations for you. You make the expectations. So anything can happen within the whole season, and the sky's the limit, and they control their own destiny. So no matter what happens, you gotta hope for the best with Port. Obviously, seeming as we're alumni for them, you will want the best for them with Vesey as well. I will want to see him have one more glorious run. But the division is stacked, like you said. The teams that they're going up against is not going to be easy for them at all. But anything can happen. Teams can prevail. This is high school football we're talking about. This is not college, so there's less amount of teams in the divisions. So you have more opportunities for you to shine through, and more opportunities for players to build through. So I cannot wait to see what happens throughout the year. Hopefully, Port makes the playoffs. I just want nothing but the best for those guys. And hopefully, like I said before, the top 25 consistently changes. That way we could get more notoriety onto the island and into the divisions, and with players as well that we haven't even heard of from before. So
Yeah,
I
and
can't wait to see
we're
what
talking
this
about a
season
Port
holds
Richmond
for us.
football program that is city champions as early as 2008. They were undefeated city champions, and even in the seasons following that, they had some pretty good seasons. But with winning championships means you get moved into the top division to face the top talent, and we've been there for the longest time. So I think the question for Port Richmond now is, and what a lot of people don't realize that this is probably going to be at some point a topic of discussion, is if Port Richmond, and this is an if Port Richmond continues to have a season like they did last year where they didn't win a single game, and they continue to have bad seasons like that, the topic of discussion of Port Richmond getting back knocked down out of the top division is a true topic of discussion. But with football, I think it's a little different because it's not like basketball. Basketball, the division gets tossed around every single year. But for the football, it's a little different, and I think that's why Port Richmond's been in the 4A for so long. And I'm not concerned with them getting knocked out of the 4A right now, but I guess we'll just have to see how this season pans out. But speaking of teams, we might as well stay on that and move into another post by Forgotten by Four, and that is the football preseason power rankings for Staten Island. And this one, as many other things that go on with high school sports on Staten Island, is quite controversial. Curtis is at 1, Farrell's at 2, Tottenville's at 3. That's your top 3. And then St. Joseph by the Sea at 4, St. Peter's at 5, Port Richmond at 6, New York at 7, McKee SI Tech at 8, Patrides at 9, Originally, Moore was at 10, but now that they've been knocked out, they can go out. So now Wagner takes the 10 spot and the last spot in the power rankings. It's safe to say that I think the biggest topic of discussion with these power rankings is that not a lot of people are happy that Peters is at 5 behind a team like C or Farrell or Tottenville. Now, Peters usually is one of the top teams on the island, but the situation I don't even think that should be the question here. I think the topic of discussion should be Farrell at the 2 spot, because there's a lot of mixed narratives going around about Farrell, about how some people are saying they could be the top team on the island. Others are saying that they're not going to win a single game against Staten Island teams. So Farrell has a lot to prove this season now. And I think that for a team like Curtis, they are being ranked out at 1 now, but they want to look to hold on to that because Tottenville, for example, could easily snatch it away from you. For Port Richmond at 6, that's interesting considering they just came off an 0-8 season. People, clearly, the critics and the people that made this list maybe see something in Port Richmond. I believe that they could hold that position. I don't think they should be ranked any lower than that when you're comparing them to teams like Newdorp, MSIT, Petrides, and Wagner, teams that they have beat. So I think it's a good position for them. And, you know, when you're fighting with all these other Catholic schools, now that Moore's out of the question, you only have 4. Or, excuse me, you only have 3. Farrell, C, and Petrides, or excuse me, and Peters are the only 3 Catholic schools now. So that's something to compete with, but I think these are solid power rankings. I think that will they get shifted around? Most definitely. Could Petrides move? Could Peters move up? I could see that happening. Farrell is probably going to be the biggest question in this power rankings. It's going to be about how they start the season, and I'm very interested to see how the rest of the season pans out for them. It could be a hit or miss season for them.
Could possibly, but this is high school, like we said before, so anything could happen with these power rankings. Now, the people who did make this list definitely do see something with these teams. Now, it is controversial, don't get me wrong, but the season goes and the power rankings can always change. Things can happen, things could change, but I'm just hoping for the fact that hopefully there might be a new team that could move up into the top 3. You never know, Obviously, you have Curtis, Farrell, and T-ville, the top 3, the big 3. You can move those around, whatever. And then you have C, you have Petrides, Wagner, Port, Newdorp. All these teams all going to compete for the top spot. Power rankings don't, they do not sum up a team. It's just based off of preseason. It's just based off of what they have and what they just recouped and what they added. So, of course, people are going to be upset about it, and they believe that their team is going to be better than this. They're going to be better than them. People are going to say he said, she said, this and that. All that matters is what happens on the field and how the teams play. Because nothing with all these power rankings, it does not mean jack. Because this is just an opinion. This is just based off of what they think. These are what the Forgotten by 4 thinks. This is what they believe who are the best teams in the island. So, this is not going to sum up how good these teams are. Who knows? Wagner they're all the way at the bottom. They could shoot up to the number 1 spot. You never know. Curtis is the number 1 team. They could shoot all the way back down. So, we can't let the power rankings, rile us up too much. The same thing with the players, because anything can happen within the season. We didn't think that Moore would be out of the season with the football team, and look what happened. Anything can happen with football, especially high school football. So don't let these narratives and all this try to take away from the season that's coming up this year. It's going to be a great season regardless. I can't wait to see what happens with these teams, and I can't wait to see who actually goes to the playoffs because you know Peters could make a run. I could see them making a run. Farrell, T-ville, and Curtis are going to be the top three. I believe they're going to be in the playoffs regardless. Port, obviously, coming back from the season that they had last year. And then you have teams like Wagner, Patrides, Newdorp. These teams all have something to prove. So there's nothing holding any of these teams back.
Yeah,
so
most definitely.
I can't wait to see
doubt.
what happens.
I'm really excited as well to see what happens. And, I'm not going to be around on the island for the football season. I don't come back until Thanksgiving, which is towards the end, if not the end of the football season. So, definitely I'm going to be watching from afar, and I'm definitely going to be interested to see how those power rankings shake up over the years. Over the season, how that top 25 ranking of the players goes around over the season. And I'm also interested to see what else unfolds with that more Catholic situation. Will they have a 2026 football season? Who knows? We're just focused on 2025 right now. Yeah, we're just focused on 2025 right now.
Anything can
And all I
happen.
know is it's still a doozy of a story, and I still know that there will be, I'm telling you, because it is inevitable, there will be more stories like this that pop off before the season starts and definitely during the season. And I'm going to be very interested to see. It's all great entertainment for the island because Lord knows we love our high school sports out here.
100%. We love our sports, and we love the chaos. Everything.
And that's why
that
I'm
happens
really
on
excited
the
for
island. We love the
basketball
chaos,
season to come around because
to.
that's always chaos. From the jump, from the
I
start
can't
of the
wait for
season, from
basketball
early
season.
on
I cannot wait.
to the big one, which is not even city playoffs for these teams. It's the borough tournament, the Staten Island High School League tournament. That's when it really shakes up because that's when you see upsets like that. Will it be the same situation that we seen over the last couple of years where Wagner, Curtis, Peters are the top teams to face on the island? They're the ones that get the byes. Will Port Richmond finally get out of the first round? Because in the last two seasons, they've had really promising seasons and got knocked down in the first round. Or will we see a new team, a newcomer?
Could we see
I'm telling you, once Wagner and Curtis were moved out of the Staten Island PSAL division and moved into a Brooklyn combined division, that shaked up everything because all of a sudden we went from Curtis and Wagner always being the top two teams on the island as far as PSAL is concerned to now Port Richmond and Patrides being the guys topping off the standings. If you look at the far history of it, that is huge. So will we see them competing again? Will we see CSI McCowan continue to make a solid run again for the island? Head coach Danny Lee, a great mind. Will MSIT come back after a rough season? Will Charlie Donahue rally his team together again and be the dominant Seagulls that they once were? It's only a matter of time. And I'm really excited for when basketball comes around. We're going to be talking a little bit about that more probably later into October, early November, because the season doesn't start until later in November, obviously. But, yeah, going to be really excited for that. And going to be really excited to continue talking about island sports here on the Outsider's View Beyond the Game. And with that, this has been episode 6 of the Outsider's View Beyond the Game podcast, presented by the boys. And, yeah, looking forward to the next episode coming out soon, coming to a screen near you. And if I did the math right, I believe the next episode, if not the next 2 episodes, will be my last episodes in this setting for a long time. So, yeah, really excited for that. But once again, thank you to Forgotten by 4 for continuing to bring out these stories and to be a new media outlet for the island. And yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Take care of yourselves and each other. Peace.